All right. Cool. All right. YouTube says that I am live right now. Hello, friends. How are y'all doing out there? So this is my second live stream in the past 2 months. I don't do these terribly often, partially because, I don't know, I'm just a little bit more comfortable with being able to edit things, and also, I guess just, you know, having to schedule time around it and everything is kind of a thing. So, some things that I am doing differently this quiet, if those of you out there could let me know that, that would be absolutely fantastic. I would really appreciate that. Yeah, and I will go ahead and give people just a couple minutes to filter in and everything. I'm seeing that there's a couple people here already and asking a couple questions. So I'll go ahead and give some answers to those right quick while I'm waiting for the feedback to roll in. Is the volume fine? Latino American 420 Texas asks, what's your favorite poi pattern? It changes. Currently it is this. So this is one that I have become fond of in the past few months that takes elements of in-spin flowers and triquetra versus pendulum. And I don't know why, but there's just something deeply satisfying about it to me. So yeah, this is my favorite pattern right now. Thank you for asking. Cool. Sounds like people are saying that the volume is fine, not too loud, not too quiet. Cool. Good to hear. Selena Prasad says, hello, hi there. Gabrielle Cherries. Oh, that's Kimmy. Hey there. Never been a part of one of your chats before. Great momcation time. That was part of the point. I have a question about learning in the timing for the behind the back waist straps. When to include the second hand. Interesting. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by when to include the second hand. It sounds like a watch to me. But interesting. We might have to dive into that in a second. Everybody's saying that volume sounds fine. Oh, hey there, Kurt Hobbs. So Kurt has done a thing that is really, really helpful to the channel. Some of you all will notice along the bottom of the screen I have this little thing that says Super Chat supports the channel. Super Chat is a thing where you can give me tips during the course of this live stream, and if you do so, I will prioritize your questions and ask them and answer them first. Kurt is asking, hey Drex, when you turn in split time, same direction anti-spin flowers, are they at top and bottom in wheel plane or wall plane? Does it even matter? Yes, it does. So, so when I do this, I think that they are in wall plane coming from the top and bottom. So like in my mind, I always look at this as being in a place where I'm kind of pulling the poi apart. It almost feels to me like this little 1.5 move right here, where I have a pendulum going over a poi that is spinning on the bottom. And it just so happens to be that I change which direction I'm facing each time. A former poi partner would do this off of the sides instead. And one of those things that I always noticed about her style was that her flowers would seem to take up more room depth-wise, and they didn't look as tight. Whereas when I do my anti-spin flowers like this, they're still intelligible as anti-spin flowers. So yes, I think that it absolutely does make a difference, and the anti-spin flowers are top and bottom. Great question, Kurt, and thank you so much for the super chat. If anybody else wants to contribute via the super chat, you can just click that little icon that looks like the $sign, same icon that I have down at the bottom of the live stream window and everything. It should be in the chat, and that will do the thing. Thank you so much for breaking the ice on that one, Kurt. Cool. Dana Luna says, thank you so much for always uploading really informative videos. They've been wonderful help. I have a question about the length of string. Is there a method for choosing the right length? I will always say that the length from about the joint of your thumb to your shoulder is a good place to start. If you find afterwards that you want shorter or longer, that's totally fine, but this is kind of the default length that I would say is good to start with. For me, this is about 23 inches. Debbie Peace, thank you so much for making these poi vids. They've really helped me improve a lot. I'm so glad to hear that. Cool. And lots of people are saying I love poi. This channel got me into poi. Yay! I'm so glad to hear that. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and teach the lesson that I had planned for this right quick. So keep those questions coming in. I will get to them once I finish this lesson and everything, but I do want to at least give you all a little bit of stuff to play with tonight. So the theory here is that there were a lot of things, like when I planned out my content for quarantine, there was a little thing that there was a problem that I ran into in that there were a ton of little subjects that were interesting and that could be helpful, but that I couldn't find a home for because there were so many bigger topics that I wanted to tackle that were going to take multiple days and multiple videos in order to dig through. So one of those things was wraps, and I wanted to give you all a quick lesson about wraps tonight because I do on occasion use them, but not very often, and I have been asked by a couple people about them. So let's talk wraps for a moment. So wraps are these little things right here. They're a way that you can reverse the direction of the poi by wrapping it around your arm. You can do this over your forearm. You can do it over your upper arm. You can do it around your legs. And yes, you can even do this as a spiral wrap. This is a very kind of exaggerated form of these. How exactly do these work? The idea is that you want to get, basically, you're trying to get your hand in the way of the poi plane. And as it wraps around, you want it to get to the point where the poi head just barely touches the tether on the other side. You can do that. If you give the poi tether a quick yank, then the poi is just going to come springing back out. Yeah. It takes a little bit of practice to get this down because, like, a lot of people will give it a little bit too much slack. If the poi head gets past the handle, the other side of the tether and everything, there's a good chance that it'll get stuck. And by the same token, if not enough gets around, they don't just fall straight back off and everything, like a pendulum. So you want to get it to the point where the head just barely touches the tether on the other side. And that's kind of the butter zone to get in and out of that wrap. Once you kind of have a feel for that and everything, you want to experiment with getting that around different surfaces of your body. So, of course, the opposite forearm is always a good place to start. And I always like to give people a drill where you flip a coin a certain number of times. And basically, it just comes down to which hand is wrapping at any given time. So say my left hand's heads and my right hand's tails. If I were to flip a left, left, right, right, rather a heads, heads, tails, tails, it would be heads, heads, tails, tails, or left, left, right, right. Or it could be like heads, tails, tails, tails. You know, in which case it would be left, right, right, right. And you can come up with fun patterns that way. Another thing you might want to practice there is doing it off of your upper arm, on the same arm. There's a really cool effect that you can do when you do these with your two arms together. You can also, of course, do it off the upper arm of the opposite hand, which I thought this looked really, really cool when I first saw it being done. There's also around your legs. There's all kinds of options there. I'm not going to show you the spiral wrap tonight because I do actually think I'm going to be able to do a tutorial specifically on that before I wrap up my series. Oh, and also you can mix these up with air wraps, which I think looks super duper sweet. But yeah, work to see if you can get it into muscle memory to wrap poi just barely around a different surface, and that will be something that you can use, especially unlit, to switch directions on the poi pretty easily. I didn't teach it in the series. I taught stalls instead, just because stalls, I think, are a little bit more flexible and a little bit more useful. And of course, they wind up being a lot more help down the road. Yeah? Cool. So now I'm going to dig into some of the questions that you all have been asking here. That lesson went much, much faster than I was expecting. Cool. So, digging back through here. Michelle Sexton says, can you do a 3-beat weave? I can indeed do a 3-beat weave. Or are you asking me to demonstrate a 3-beat weave? Aric Allen says, just want to say thanks for doing what you do. You're so welcome. It's my pleasure. Kimmy, Noel Cherry says, I find it shorter is better for learning it first and trying it out later is longer. So it depends on the trick. Shorter is better for learning stalls, which, God, I wish that I had said that in my stalls video. I feel kind of bad that I didn't say that. But yeah, shorter is better for stalls. I feel like longer is better for learning most things that happen in wheel plane, like weaves and wheel turns and everything. And certainly some of the more intermediate stuff that we're starting to get into, like crossers especially, are definitely going to be easier with longer tethers to them, for sure. David, what kind of one-poi drills do you recommend? So many. It's interesting you should ask that, because one of the reward tiers of my Patreon is actually that I do a weekly poi drill that I send out to people. There are a couple of them that are single poi drills. So this coming month's drills are all centered around throws. So if you're interested in that, that is like the $10 level on my Patreon and everything, and I highly recommend signing up for that, because we're going to be playing around with in-spin throws and no-beat throws, and how to shift timing and direction with throws and everything. Yeah, it's good stuff. He has released a recent tutorial about the 3-beat weave, and it is epic. Oh, thank you so much. I've learned so much from your videos. You're great explaining and breaking down the moves, says Ania Kara. Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Cool. It looks like a couple people were interested in the raps there. That's good to hear. Emily Yellen says, my shoulders constantly click when I try and do extensions, especially backwards. Do you think I'm straining them too much, or is it something I need to practice to get my muscles used to? I would warm up your shoulders first. Let me show you some shoulder warm-ups that I think are really good. So, I actually got these from my dance instructor, and I will warm up with these every once in a while, just like listening to music before a spin. But basically, you want to start off rolling your shoulders back 8 times, and then rolling your shoulders forwards 8 times. Then you want to roll your elbows back 8 times, and then roll your elbows forwards 8 times. Then take turns reaching one hand up. Make sure that each hand gets to reach the sky 8 times. The reason why we're doing this, and I'm pretty sure the reason why your shoulder's clicking, is that when our shoulders are inactive for a significant amount of time, what'll happen there is the inside the joint actually kind of dries out. So when you start moving it around and everything, the bones start clicking against each other and everything. So if you do a warm-up like this, what it'll do is it'll kind of wake up the joint, and it'll start to lubricate itself and everything, so that when you do start to use your poi and everything, the joint is already ready to roll, and you are less likely to get the clicking or to injure yourself overall. Yeah. And Kimmy says, hey Emily, as a person, a series of shoulder injuries, I have a personal warm-up I'll share with you. Good, please share that information. I will also say, in the interest of full disclosure, that I've never had any problems with my shoulders. I just won the genetic lottery and somehow am able to spin without hurting my shoulders, and I'm very, very happy and grateful for that. But yeah, in terms of shoulder maintenance, especially if they've been injured and everything, I don't know, because I've never had to deal with it. I'm sorry. But yeah, thank you, Kimmy, for jumping in there and helping out. Kimmy says, love the upper arm wrap. Oh, yes, thank you. I'm glad. Yeah, I don't use wraps very often anymore, but they look really cool, I feel like. Kimmy's also saying, I do have a series of exercises against a wall for my shoulder. It's easy. Find me on Facebook and I'll talk with you after all this. Fantastic. Yes. Go to those people who have that experience and profit from that experience for sure. Dana Lunas says, wraps are the best. I agree. Wraps are awesome. I don't do them nearly as often as I should. That is for sure. Sarah, I'm going to say it's Vachon, and I'm probably wrong, and I'm sorry. I've been learning from your videos every day. Thank you for keeping me sane during this quarantine. Absolutely. Honestly, making the videos is part of what's keeping me sane too. So I think that it works really, really well for everybody there. Yeah. Let's see here. Emily Yellen says, "Do you have an Instagram handle?" I can't tell if she's talking to Kimmy here or to me. But I will tell you that my Instagram handle is DrexFactor. Oh, and it looks like Kimmy responded right away. So I guess it was looking for Kimmy's Instagram handle. Cool, there you go. Raphael Franzen-Ben says, I really want to say thanks for all your tutorials. I took out my poi from my desk in this quarantine and started practicing thanks to your tutorials. Hallelujah. That is what I love to hear. That is the thing that makes me really, really, really happy. I very deliberately kind of approached teaching during the quarantine as being like, I want to start things over from scratch, specifically because I imagine that there were a lot of people out there that wanted to learn poi, but didn't really have the time before, and now they've got the time, they got the availability and everything. So I'm like, okay, cool. Well, let's give you the pieces you need in order to make it happen, right? So I am glad to hear that you are one of those people, and I hope there are many more out there like you. Please, I hope that you keep with it even after the quarantine lifts. One thing that I'm really hoping happens in here and everything, there are so many studies showing that it takes about 21 days of engaging in it takes 21 days of engaging in something to really make it a habit and a ritual and everything. So I'm really hoping that people get into the habit of spinning poi during the lockdown and everything. I'm really hoping that they get into the habit after they get 21 days of spinning poi under their belt, and it becomes something that feels routine and it feels habit, so that even after we go back to having the world opened up again and everything, that we're in a place where people keep on keeping on with it and everything. That is my hope. That is my hope. So do your part and keep on practicing. Yeah, cool. Corey Sand says, thanks, Drex. I am having trouble with going from a reverse 3-beat to windmill. Have any tips? Yes, I do. So I did talk about this in my video on the topic, but I'll kind of go through it a little bit again now. And that's that when you're doing this reverse 3-beat beat here and everything, the moment that is really key is this moment when you're, so I'm doing my reverse weave off my left-hand side. So this happens when my right hand is going under, right here, right here, right here, yeah? Now when that happens, the next thing that happens for me is I gotta drop that left hand behind my shoulder. It's really, really important that I don't open up before dropping the left hand back. I have to do this in such a way that it's integrated into the weave, yeah? So think, right hand goes under, the left goes back, the right goes back. It's so important because we really have to think of this as right behind, left behind, right behind, left behind if we're going around, yeah? So, as the right goes behind, that's your cue to drop your left poi behind your shoulder, and then the right hand follows it, yeah? I would honestly just drill this over and over again. At that moment, when the right hand is going under, drop the left, drop the right. Make sure that you're doing this from such a place that, the left hand would almost be about to go underneath the right here, right there, but instead you're kind of pitching it back behind your back and everything. That right there is the key moment to find. Once you've found that, you can go ahead and get the right hand engaged here and everything, yeah? So think, whew, and it'll be left-right. I guess another way you could think of it would be like, you know how you think of like right hand under, left hand under, right hand under, left hand under? At that moment when it's going to be left hand under, as you're thinking, you know, right under, left back, right back. It's the same timing. You just replace the left under with left back, and then right back, yeah? That's the best way I know how to describe that. It's really like almost a climbing motion that you're doing with your arms. And it's, I know it's super weird to find that moment to get the left hand disengaged and everything. But yeah, think of replacing the left under with left up, and that will probably help. Oh, hooray! Kimmy had a super chat in there. Thank you so much, Kimmy. Anybody else that wants to get on board with this, it is much appreciated. And of course, it'll get your question bumped up in the queue. Kimmy says, what got you into Poi? Can you explain Vulcan Tech Gospel shortly, but different than your older videos? Goodness, okay, this could be a novel. So what got me into Poi were several things. First, I went to Burning Man in 2006, and that was the first time I saw fire dancing. And was really captivating to me, and specifically seeing Fire Conclave on Burn Night. This was like Saturday night at Burning Man. There was something that just did to me that I was like, I want to learn how to do this. The second thing that got me into Poi was, you know, my roommate at the time knew that I wanted to get into Poi spinning, and he did Christmas in Thailand that year, and he came home with a set of Poi that were a Christmas gift for me. And I was absolutely, so I'd had a very disastrous Poi lesson from a friend, and I actually was ready to give up on Poi. I didn't think that I was going to be able to do it long term. I didn't think I was coordinated enough. I didn't think like whatever I needed kinesthetically was in place. So I had basically already given up at that point. And then when my roommate gave me those Poi, that's what got me to actually sit down and spend time practicing. The next two things that got me into Poi were connecting with people in Denver that were spinning at Confluence Park, a fire jam, every Sunday. It was a few blocks away from where I lived in Denver at the time. And of course, the other thing was the availability of tutorials on YouTube, which had just started to be a thing when I started spinning. And specifically, I got a lot of Nick Woolsey's tutorials. So it was those four things. And if those four things hadn't happened all within like a year period, I don't think I would have stuck with it. So I'm very, very grateful that all four of those things happened in such rapid succession from each other, for sure. In terms of explaining Vulcan Tech Gospel, the shortest way that I can explain Vulcan Tech Gospel is that it is a method for classifying different flowers and oh, sweet! Thank you, Kurt, for the super chat. I will get to your question in just 1 second here. Vulcan Tech Gospel is a way of classifying flower-based Poi tricks based upon timing and direction. There's a few patterns that emerge once you start studying flowers from the perspective of playing around with timing and direction. Namely that you find that if the hands and Poi are both in the same timing and direction, that the result will always be flowers, either in-spin or anti-spin. And they'll always be the same flower. If, on the other hand, the timing and direction of the hands is different from the timing and direction of the Poi, the result will always be a hybrid. You can use this as a system for changing timing and direction with your hands while seamlessly keeping the Poi in their own timing and direction. In other words, you can transition between different timing and directions with your hands, and the Poi can remain in the same timing and direction. You can also do this in such a way that you change the timing and direction of the poi as well. It's basically the intersection of two threads of poi thought, one having to do with timing and direction, and the other having to do with flowers and hybrids and everything. And it basically is just a way of writing down the patterns that emerge when you think through this this kind of lens. Yeah? Cool. And Kurt, I'm getting to you before the thing runs out. Hallelujah. Can you share any split time opposites body tracers? Yes, I can. Also, thank you so much for the super chat. You all are awesome out there. It is really appreciated. The first body tracer in split time opposites that I would share is just doing, actually, I'll do it this way, is doing snakes in split time opposites. In the same way that we can do split time same direction snakes going out to each side, we can also do split time opposite snakes by taking them around our shoulders as we push our hands back and forth. Yeah? Doing this isn't actually that difficult. Like, you can just start off from a place of having your poi in split time opposites and stall them around your shoulders and bring them back out going the other way. Stall them around your shoulders, bring them back out the other way. Stall them around your shoulders, bring them back out the other way. Stall them around your shoulders, bring them back out the other way. Now, the way you tweak this is you turn your body as you're doing the stall. Do the stall and turn, do the stall and turn, do the stall and turn, do the stall and turn. And look at that. We've got split time opposites snakes going right there. Pretty awesome, right? In addition, there's a style of doing, oh god, it's so weird because it feels like a weed, but it's not. Nikki Evers does this all the time, where it's, it comes from a crossed arm place, and you're turning your body whenever you arrive in one of these places where your arms are crossed and everything. It always feels to me like I'm in the wrong plane when I'm doing it, and just Nikki makes it look so effortless and easy. Ooh, I'm gonna hit my back up there. And I'm really, really jealous of him for being able to do that. Ooh. The timing actually isn't so difficult, or rather so different from the split time opposites crossers that I showed off in the last live stream. But suffice it to say, it also is one of those things where you're switching up which hand is on top and which hand is on bottom every time that you do it, and there's some complications that come by as a result of that, yeah? I'm trying to think if I know any other body tracers in split time opposites. I wonder what vertical snakes would look like in that kind of space. I don't know. I should play around with that and see if I can come up with some more options. But hopefully that at least is a good place to start, yeah? Cool. Thank you for the question, Kurt, and thank you for the super chat. Thank you both to Kimmy as well as Kurt for that super chat. Let me dig back through these questions y'all have here. If anybody wants to get bumped up in the queue, super chat's a great way of doing that, just FYI. Cool. I answered Corey Sand's question. Dena Luna says, favorite style of poi for beginners? Oh, I guess you're talking about what type of poi. I'm started with the weighted. They look like yours. It feels difficult to learn with them because they're heavy. Oh, pardon me. They're heavy. What's a beginner-friendly style? Honestly, a bunch of people have been asking me this question too, and I should probably just make a video on it. If you're a beginner, invest in a set of pod poi. They're light, they're soft, they are really, really, really versatile and resilient. These are going to last for years. I actually still have the first pair of pod poi I ever got, I think a decade ago now. So grab a pair of these, use my promo code. It's just DrexFactor at checkout at flowtoys.com. It'll help out the channel, and quite frankly, these are the best beginner poi on the market, in my humble opinion. Starting off with contact poi is difficult because they are hard. They are not going to be pleasant to learn with. These are much more pleasant. So yeah, go the Flow Toys route for sure.
Kimmy says, thank you so much for helping sell out, bro. Every one of us enjoy your epic videos, and you're such an awesome teacher. Thank you. Kept us going here in New Mexico and made my family a flow family. That is what I like to hear. Get them started early. Hopefully they'll keep with it their entire lives. Emily Yellen says, do you know of any good poi retreats or like a 1-2-3 week residential class? Would love to go do something like this after lockdown is over. Kind of. So Nick Woolsey hosts retreats in Costa Rica and in Vancouver at a place called Leviathan that are like multi-day retreats and everything. I don't think either of those things is going to still happen this year. I don't think we're going to see another festival until 2021, to be honest with you. But in terms of good poi retreats that I enjoy, there are very few that like last an entire week. I've enjoyed Flame, I've enjoyed Wildfire, I definitely enjoyed some of the Flow Fests, like Florida Flow Fest. I was going to be at New York Flow Fest this year, but unfortunately it got canceled due to COVID-19. Darn. Yeah, there are a lot of good options out there. And I may or may not be working on a concept for my own poi retreat. So if there are things that you all would like to see in a retreat, please let me know in those comments, because it will help me get an idea of what I might want to do with that. Yeah? Cool. Thanks. Lily Agoristo says, hi, teacher. Hello, student. Greece is here. Hello, Greece. I don't speak any Greek. I speak little bits of a lot of languages that are only spoken in one country, but Greece is not one of them. So unfortunately, I cannot greet you in Greek, which is kind of weird because as a kid that grew up obsessed with dinosaurs, there's a lot of Greek and Latin roots that I learned in the course of that, but there's absolutely no chance that I could actually like speak it, unfortunately. So my apologies, but thank you, Greece, for being here. Kimmy says, what VTG is, not more of how it is. Okay. Dude, the whole about to give up, that's how I felt about poi at first until I found your videos, Drex. Aww, that's very sweet. That means a lot to hear. I'm glad that I turned it around for myself. I'm glad that I kept on going. I'm glad that my roommate had that set of poi for me because I don't think it would have happened otherwise. And very clearly, it totally changed my life. So, yay! I hope you stick with it too. It's very rewarding. Oh goodness. Kimmy says, "Wow, VTG is immensely so much cooler than I thought. Thank you. You're so welcome." Yeah, in VTG at this point, like, there's a lot that fits underneath that umbrella. Because they've done entire sections where they just talk about things like the 3 downbeat patterns. So it's 4-pedal anti-spin versus 2-pedal in-spin. They've talked about the 1-beat patterns, cat eyes, extensions, isolations. They've talked about the 2-beat patterns, triquetra in-spin. There's even a section where they've talked about taking some of these shapes into 3 dimensions and everything. Which there's some cool stuff to be mined there too. So yeah, give it a look-see for sure. David asks, do you still incorporate one poi and no poi into your daily practice? Just practicing, I can't talk, poi fu basically, and if so, how do you approach it? I very rarely incorporate one poi unless there is a super difficult trick that I'm working on. Generally speaking, as I'm working on stuff, I can have I can work in such a way that both of the poi are involved. But like, so in terms of no poi, the way that usually works for me, honestly, is my usual warm-up before I start spinning every time is that I will do the 24 form of Tai Chi. And there's a lot of those movements that do find their way into my poi spinning. But yeah, honestly, a lot of it for me is just exploring what it feels like to move around with both of the poi. There's something about dancing with that, and there's something about kind of playing with gravity that really I don't know, it just feels very satisfying to me in a way that I have a difficult time explaining to people. And, especially in the past few years and everything, incorporating dance into that has been such a huge focus for me. I I actually, from my practice this evening as I was walking home, I got this picture in my head of like some really strange body movements. I'm like, can I use those with poi? And I actually like went back to the spot where I was practicing and sat down and tried to work through it and everything and got a little bit of video. And there's some cool ideas in there and everything, but it's definitely pretty raw. But yeah, a lot of my practice is honestly just with the poi in my hands and seeing how I can bring together the movements that feel right for my body with the poi, and gets me pretty far. Kurt Hobbs, basically tuck turns without turning. Yes! I don't know why I hadn't thought of that, because sometimes it just takes somebody who looks at it at a slightly different angle to make it make sense. You cannot count the number of times that has happened for me, for sure. Kurt Hobbs, do you have an Instagram as well? Hi, Melissa Shoot. Oh, Melissa Shoot says hi. Kimmy Hamley, I think most poi retreats have been canceled for the year unless out of country. Yes. There are some in the fall that I don't think have been canceled yet, but I am expecting them to be. This is going to be the year without festivals, just straight up. Cool. Melissa Shoot says, thank you for your videos. You are so welcome, Melissa. I'm glad that they are useful. Emily Yellen says, yeah, I was hoping to get some ideas for the far future. Want to get back to travel and start off with a poi retreat if it exists. Yeah, if you want to travel, especially abroad. Oh, hooray! Matt Ben McDaniel, thank you for the thank you for the super chat. Cool. I'm going to answer this question then because I really appreciate the super chat. Please suggest a camcorder model that can take excellent video of visual poi. Do we need to be spending $400 on a used Canon XA10? No, you don't. So, the first camera that I ever did really in-depth visual poi shots with, if you go back and watch my video of it's the one that I did to the Doomtree song. I can't remember the name of the song now, but it's a single take video that I did with the person who was using the camera and everything. They were using a glide cam, and this is the camera I use. This is a Nikon D3300. I bought this for $300, and well, I didn't buy it. It was a gift, but it was $300, and this is what I used for that. Pretty much any entry-level DSLR camera will do the trick for this. The key is the camera settings, not the camera itself. What you want is a camera that will, the settings on the camera need to be such that the shutter speed is equal to the frame rate. So if you're shooting at 30 frames per second, your shutter speed needs to be a 30th of a second as well. The reason for this is you need the shutter to be open for the full length of the frame. If the shutter is any shorter than that, you're going to get a gap in your trails. So first up, set your DSLR to have its shutter speed equal to the frames per second, and it honestly doesn't matter just so long as they're equal. There have been several times when I have done footage where I'm shooting at 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second, and I will just make sure that I've got my shutter speed in the place that it needs to be, either 1/60th of a second, 1/120th of a second, what have you. It all works. I will say, though, that if you're shooting at greater than 30 frames a second, you want to be doing your editing in Premiere Pro, because the plugins in Final Cut have a limit for how long the trails will be, and if you're shooting at 60 frames per second, you're going to wind up with really short trails because you don't have as much control there. yeah, once you have your footage, pull it into either Premiere Pro, or you can also use Final Cut, which is what I use for everything. And the best way I've found to do this is actually to put 2 layers of footage on top of one another. And the top layer of footage has a luma key on it. So basically anything that it detects as light becomes transparent. And that's the layer that you apply the echo effect to. And then, of course, the other part of this too is you want to make sure that and this is the trick, is you also want to make sure that your ISO is as low as possible. The more you bump up that ISO, the more it will wash out the colors in those images, and you're going to wind up with trails that are all white instead of showing the detail of the images and everything. Ideally, if you can shoot at ISO 100, that is ideal. I have found that when I shoot at ISO 100, there are only 2 conditions under which I can really pull it off. Either at dusk, there's like basically a 10-minute window where there's still enough ambient sunlight that you can see your body moving around and also see the trails of the poi and everything. And the other option is using these LED panels that you see behind me here. I will actually take those outside and set those up in the courtyard behind my apartment complex in order to in order to capture in order to make sure you can still see my body as I'm spinning and everything. So camera settings, the frame rate and shutter speed have to be equal. Keep the ISO as low as possible, and then do the effect in either Final Cut or Premiere Pro. And I see a lot of people have been chiming in with tech answers here. So let me see what is going on here. My DSLR, a Canon T1i can't do. At 30 frames a second and 1/30th exposure, there are black bars. Okay, so here's what's happening there. Your camera is not actually shooting at 30 frames per second. It is shooting, it's doing something that is called drop frames. This camera does exactly the same thing. Drop frames are basically just a way that it kind of saves a little bit of data space by kicking out the occasional frame that's close enough to the frame before or after. So you always see this listed as like 29.98 frames per second or something like that, right? Here's how you fix it. There is a program that you can download that's called Handbrake. It's got this weird little icon that looks like a pineapple and everything, but one of those things that you can do in Handbrake is that you can bring a video into it and export that video in such a way that it is at a constant frame rate. So like you bring in a video that's at 29.98 frames a second and everything, and when you export it, you go to the little section where it's like talking about the technical details of the video and everything, and you take it from peak frame rate to constant frame rate, and it will insert those missing frames again and and make sure that those bars disappear for you. That's the way to get around that, because I had that exact same problem with this camera, and it drove me crazy for months until I could figure out what was causing it. It's that it's variable frame rate rather than constant frame rate. So import the footage, run it through Handbrake, and that will fix it, I think. At least if you're running into the same problem that I did way back in the day. Let me run through and make sure that there was no other additional data that rolled in while I was talking about that. That was that may have an impact here. Oh, and thank you, Kurt Hobbs. Yay! Thanks for the super chat. Black bars because it might be interrupting its shooting or distort the previous frame. No, I think the black bars are because it's shooting at variable frame rate. Matt, Ben, Daniel, are you saying the T1i DSLR isn't high-end enough? No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that you're going to have to convert the footage before you can you can really get that use out of it. Oh, and you followed up saying, okay, I'll check out Handbrake, but I prefer to have a camera that doesn't have gap artifacts. Unfortunately, I'm finding out that this is really common with DSLRs. Even the DSLR that I'm using now, the Sony A6500, which is a really good DSLR. This is basically like a RED in DSLR form and everything. RED being a kind of 4K camera. This does the same damn thing, and it's just a thing that cameras do to save space on data. And honestly, it's just because literally we have an application for this video that almost nobody else uses. So the camera manufacturers don't think, hey, somebody out there is going to be shooting a thing where they're going to need these continuous trails and everything. I don't think it ever crosses their mind. So I think Handbrake will fix that problem for you. And if it doesn't, please email me. And if you can, like, attach some of the footage and everything, and that might help me figure out how to help you as well. But I hope that that helps. Cool. Let me grab Kurt Hobbs' question here. Thank you so much for the super chat, Kurt. In 2-poi one hand, how do you stall only one poi to switch between split same and together opposites? I don't stall it. I use a pendulum. Let me show you. So, when I switch from split same to together opposite, you'll notice that what's happening is my pinky end poi is doing a real quick pendulum here. Woo! And sorry, my ceilings are low, so I always get a little bit of like Danger Will Robinson feeling as I'm doing this here. Yeah, so it's that. Actually, am I right about that? No, it is. It's my thumb end that does the pendulum, of course. So as I'm doing this weave here and everything, in this moment where my thumb end is coming across my body and everything, I'm simultaneously killing the momentum on it, as well as picking up the momentum on my pinky end. This is one of those moments, like, the absolute core of 2-poi one hand is that you have to learn how to control your pinky end and your thumb end independently. You have to be able to add momentum to one while taking momentum away from another. The way I feel like that happens is as soon as the momentum dies on my thumb end, I'm really kind of twisting my pinky end in there to keep it moving and everything. And you'll note my hand also goes up as I'm doing that in order to help the pinky end get around. So it happens right, boom, there. And that's what gets me to together opposites, right? Let me show you that again. So the thumb end, I put momentum on it, I pick up the pinky end, right here, yeah? If there's a way to stall one end in a controlled fashion and not stall the other, I do not know what it is. Mostly when I play around with stalls, I'm playing around with them in such a way that both of the poi are stalling at the same time. Like, I've spent a lot of time lately working on doing stalls in split time opposites, and the very explicit goal that I'm working with right here is I'm trying to get both of the poi to stall at once. But even when I'm doing things like shifting into the reverse weave from together opposite and everything from that butterfly, as you can see, I'm treating the pinky end as a pendulum and pulling my thumb end around under to initiate that reverse weave. I do all of my timing and direction transitions in 2-poi one hand using pendulums rather than stalls. And part of the reason for that is just that pendulums are a little bit easier for me, and also that stalls are really, really notoriously difficult to do in 2-poi one hand, period. Like, seriously, I have had few more difficult challenges in my poi career than figuring out how to do stalls in 2-poi one hand. Because, like, you're having to do opposite stalls at the same time. And in theory, the physics of how a stall should work should make that perfectly possible. The problem is that a lot of the time when we're doing stalls, we're fudging it just a little bit. And as soon as you're doing it with both poi at the same time, you don't get to fudge it anymore. And it shows you real quickly some of the things that you have been doing that have been a little bit on the side of not so much perfect form there and everything. So I will call 2.1 hand stalls the great equalizer in that regard. Cool. I'm going to jump back and make sure that there's no outstanding questions here. Yes, buried in among the questions about the trails and footage and everything. Emily Yellen asks, I'm trying to learn split same stalls you refer as rast axle. Any suggestions? I mean, the biggest one would just be really master getting your upstalls down. Like, seriously, when it comes to split time same direction, it becomes this thing that for the first time, you really, really, really have to be able to accomplish both stalls at exactly the same time. So having your upstalls work in a split time same direction kind of place is really the Rosetta Stone for making that happen. Even without being able to do the overall motion for it and everything, just be able to do the thing where you can stall one up and one down at the same time and hit those points. Without that, you're dead in the water. So make sure that you drill that going both directions and everything, and that the rast axle stall pattern is just a cakewalk once you can get that down. It's literally just going back and forth between those two stalls and everything. So yes, master getting the clean up-down stalls in split time same direction, and that is the biggest piece of that equation for sure. Let's see here. Lexi Nichelle says, I would come to your retreat. Thank you. Where would it be? I'm not sure. Probably somewhere in the mid-Atlantic because I'd want it to be close to where I live. Thanks for doing all of this. I've learned a lot from you. Oh, thank you, Lexi. I'm glad to hear that. I'm super glad to hear that. Let's see here. Kimmy's saying her T6 need to be converted also. Cool. All right, I'm not just talking out my butt here. Think you forgot some folks up top somewhere. Oh, goodness. I think I went back and caught some stuff. I hope I caught everything. If I didn't catch your question, ask it again. Matt, GoPros are also very nice, especially finding an older one that is on clearance from their site. Normally an older model is under a year old. Yeah, the one trick with GoPros is that they have the same thing that smartphones do, where the frame rate is kind of hard-coded into it, and it's really, really difficult to get them to have a shutter speed that is equal to their frame rate. So I think the newer ones you can edit that, but like on the older ones, like I'm using a GoPro 3. I'm so behind the times, and it's just one of those things that you know, it works great for some things, but trails are not one of them. But yeah, the newer ones might be different. Melissa Schutz says, my little sister asked why you spin poi. Oh, goodness. I mean, so many reasons. It has connected me with my body in a way that I never thought possible before. You know, I've spent most of my life being really, really awkward. I'm like above average height, and I just like never really completely grew into my body. And poi spinning made me feel graceful and made me feel coordinated, and I had never felt that at all in my life. So poi spinning has been that. It's also been a great mental challenge. It got me into higher level mathematics. I thought for most of my life that I was bad at math because I had a really, really tough time when I got to algebra in school. And, you know, it was one of those things that there was a guy who showed me some basics of how you can learn math with trig, or rather how you can model poi patterns with trig. And that just like sent me down a really, really deep rabbit hole. And, you know, now I read books about math for fun, and there are things that I understand that I never thought I would have, like prime number theory and graph theory, and just finding out how diverse the world of mathematics is. And it connected me with an amazing community. The people that I've met through spinning have been some of the most amazing people that I've met in my life. So the short answer is that just poi has completely changed my life. So that's why I spin poi. It has helped connect me with my body. It's given me wonderful creative challenges, and it has given me an incredible community. So it has probably changed my life more than anything else that I've ever tried to take up in my life. So, yeah, that's why. Hero 6 and Hero 7 aren't very hard to use. I have GoPro Hero 7 black and silver. All my trails photos have been GoPro strips. Okay. Yeah, the GoPro 3, there's no way to adjust the shutter speed. So, it's good to hear that they changed that on the later ones. That'd be very helpful. Sarah Vachon. Oh, Kurt Hobbs is heading out. Thanks for answering my questions. You're so welcome. Thank you so much for the super chat, Kurt, and thank you for all your support on Patreon as well. I always appreciate you hopping on these chats. You have good questions. So have yourself a great evening, and thank you for joining me tonight. It's much appreciated. Sarah Vachon, I'm totally still mispronouncing that, is asking, are there any female poi spinners that you know or can recommend checking out? Yes. Love to see their style of spinning. My favorite female poi spinner right now is a British woman by the name of Jo Fayeed. She and I have had a really interesting online conversation going on now for several months, where we've been coming up with different ways to switch between vertical and horizontal planes in such a way that is really flowy and that doesn't call attention to itself like plane breaking normally does. I absolutely adore her style, and I highly recommend checking her out. I would also recommend Liz Knights. She has been around forever and a day, and she's one of those women who isn't just really flowy, but is super techie. She's way techier than I am at this point. And I have a lot of respect for her. She and I did a collaboration last year where we got together for a day and did a whole bunch of partner poi together and everything. And I really appreciate her talent. I really appreciate how she presents herself. She's one of those people that just can absolutely slay it on the tech side of things, but also understands how presentation should work as a performer. She is one of the more successful performers that I've met in my day, and between costuming and choreography and just overall presentation, she's amazing. So yeah, I'd highly recommend checking her out. She's a person that I have known for years. We must have met 10 years ago. Definitely one of those people that I've known for so long. I don't think I could remember where specifically I met her, but seeing her grow over the years has been a huge treat. Oh, Kimmy's saying may have to go also. Leaving light outside for some spinning. Oh, then go out and get some spinning in while it's light out for sure. Liz Knight is the most amazing ever. Yes, I agree. She's pretty incredible. Trying to think if there are any other female spinners. There are other female spinners that I follow just because I personally appreciate their style. There is a woman from South Africa whose name I'm totally blanking on right now, who is she has a background in contemporary modern dance. Oh, you're welcome, Kimmy. Kimmy says thank you again. You're so welcome. Have a good night and have fun spinning. Oh my goodness, I'm kind of mad at myself that I can't remember her name. But she does just really beautiful dance and poi fusion work. There's a lot of Russian spinners that are incredible too. There's Laura Leo. That's not how you actually pronounce her name, but that's how it transliterates into English. She's a former ballet dancer. She is just absolutely astounding and creates really incredible choreography. Plus, she's one of the people that organizes PoiCon in Russia, so I'm a really big fan of hers. There's also Katya Stakhanova, who does amazing tutorials and is quite frankly just the most steezy body tracer spinner I have ever seen in my life. Like, all of us do the body tracers, but she makes it look so stylish and so slick that you look at it and you're like, why can't I do it that way? So yeah, mad respect for her. And there's also Zuz Zhudova, I think is how you pronounce her last name. I think that she's Czech or Slovak instead of Russian, but she's also a person that does a lot of poi dance fusion and whose style I really appreciate. There are a lot of people out there. There's also a woman that I've been following lately, Beth. It's either Selgado or Delgado. I can't remember what the first letter of her last name is, but she's a person who's really, really clean and flowy and everything, and just I appreciate watching her because she just always looks like she's having a really good time, and sometimes that's all that it takes as a viewer to really enjoy them, you know? Cool. So that's a whole bunch of female poi spinners that I like. I hope that helps. There are so many good female poi spinners out there right now, and there should be more of them on the top 10 list. Just saying. Alec Allison, right there with you on the reasons on poi. I would imagine so. I think that my reasons for spinning poi are not uncommon for folks out there. Kimmy, before she headed off, said, I love hearing about your background. It makes you more human, bro. I'm glad to hear that. I didn't realize that I wasn't human. People need that. Love how you came to poi. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, flesh and blood. I bleed like anybody else. So the only difference is that I make and edit a lot of videos and put them online. Butterful says, that's what's up. Happy for you, Drex. Oh, thank you. I'm happy for me too. Thanks for joining us tonight. Sarah Vachon says, Michelle, thank you. Kurt Hobbs, I have to go. Oh, we already did this. Emily Yelland, really heartwarming to hear you talk about starting poi. You are so appreciated for your videos. My pleasure. I'm glad to hear that was inspirational. And Michelle is saying, Joe is unbelievable. I agree. Love watching her spin. I want to tour through the UK at some point, and like pretty much the biggest reason I want to do that is just so I can go hang out with her because I enjoy her spinning style so much that I really want to get to meet her in person. Kimmy, that was your goodbye message. I already looked through that. Timo Satan? I just know the basics about graph theory, but so you also think it might be useful to understand poi transitions in that way. Positions equal nodes, timing and direction, transitions equals links. I don't think of it necessarily that way. Generally speaking, when I think about graph theory in a poi context, I'm thinking about a poi pattern. And specifically, it's very, very easy to determine if a poi pattern is actually repeatable based upon whether the intersections of the points and everything are a planar graph. That might be Greek to all of you out there, but suffice it to say, graph theory is this whole branch of mathematics where we look at, like, if you have these points and connect them with lines and everything, then you create something that mathematicians would refer to as a graph. If that sounds like a computer network to you, you are correct. That is actually one great application for graph theory. It was actually invented by I can't remember where he was originally from. I think it was Germany or Prussia. A mathematician by the name of Leonhard Euler. And Euler, E-U-L-E-R, because #German. And basically, there was this long-standing math problem based upon the arrangement of bridges in a town called Königsberg, which I think is in that area is Kaliningrad, Russia now. But basically, people were trying to figure out, and this was like literally just a question that people would ask to shoot the shit and like have a puzzle to work through and everything, is if you could walk across every bridge in the city once without retracing your steps. And it turns out that the answer is no. And the way that Euler answered that question was to invent a new branch of mathematics called graph theory. And it turns out that graph theory also has implications for things like platonic solids, and there turned out to be so many advanced uses of graph theory that go way beyond the Seven Bridges of Königsberg. But interestingly enough, there is a way that you can redraw the bridges of Königsberg to make it a God, I'm getting so deep in the weeds here. I'm sorry. Bear with me for just a minute longer. So the trick that Euler discovered is when you have this arrangement of points and lines connecting them and everything, if you're going to go across each line only once, then it has to work out in such a way that each of the points that the lines go to and everything, there can only be either 0 of those points that have an odd number of lines coming out of them, or 2. And, thinking through this, it actually seems really obvious, because if you go through one of those points, there has to be a way in and a way out. And the only way that doesn't work is if one of them is where you start and the other one is where you end, right? And the arrangement of the Seven Bridges of Königsberg was such that different shores had odd numbers of bridges attached to them. There were more points that you could go through than just 2 that had odd numbers of bridges to them. Wow, I'm going so deep into the woods on this. I really appreciate y'all being patient with me on that. But suffice it to say, in order to solve this problem, Euler basically just reduced each landmass down to a single point and kind of thought of the bridges as just being the lines that connected these points, right? Now there's a way that you can redraw the bridges in Königsberg, because there were 4 landmasses, right? There was a West Island and East Island, there's the North Shore and the South Shore of the river. And if you redraw that graph in such a way that each of the points has 4 lines coming in and out of it, the pattern is the same as Zann's diamond. So that tells us that Zann's diamond is one of those patterns that you can start at any point and be able to do a full circuit without retracing the same line twice. So when I look at Poi patterns from the lens of graph theory, I am looking for these types of graphs. These types of graphs where it is possible to do a complete circuit from any point and have it be repeatable. That was so much longer and more detailed an explanation than that question actually needed. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Oh my goodness. Melissa Shoup, does she have a YouTube channel? I don't know which she you're referring to there. I had a bunch of she's. All of the she's that I referred to are on Instagram, and I think only Liz Knights and Laura Leo are on YouTube. Oh, no, and Katya Statkinova is also on YouTube now that I think about it. But you can find all of them on Instagram. Michelle, Liz has a YouTube channel and puts out a Ladies of Tech Poi video every year, except this one. Yes, it is true. That is one of my favorite compilations, in fact. Butterful, what was the name of that program for phones to bypass 30 frames? So the program that I use on my iPhone is called iFocus, iPhocus. It's not a terribly good program, to be honest with you. If you are really interested in doing trails photography, in doing trails video and everything, you should really just invest in a DSLR. It will give you so much more control over what you're recording, and that's really where you should be looking there. Cool, Sarah Vachon. Thank you. I'm a ballet dancer, and I was able to mesh that in a little with my gloving. Definitely can't wait to figure out how to incorporate that into my spinning. Yeah, I mean, so I was trained in modern dance with a little bit of ballet and jazz and a couple other things in there, and that has been a cornerstone of how I've been integrating poi and dance. So there's a lot of stuff there to explore, and I think that we ought to be doing it. Timo Satan says, the bridges of Königsberg. Yes, 7 bridges, 2 islands, yeah. If you draw it with 8 bridges instead of 7 bridges, there's a way to do it where it comes out looking like Zann's diamond. Justin Blanchard says, just want to say I super appreciate all that you do. I don't get to watch live as much as I would like due to being a medic. Wow, thank you for your service. Sadly, I am on home quarantine at the moment, but your videos help me through. That really means, oh my god, I'm taking a screen capture of that right now, because that just made my day. You are out there on the front line helping people, and I'm just teaching them how to swing balls around in their living rooms. It means a lot to know that I am able to support you in the work that you're doing too. Wow. That really means a lot to me. Thank you so much. You're telling me thanks to you, and I'm saying thanks to you. Yeah, thank you every day with people that are coming in with infections and everything. He's got 2 young daughters, and I know that he's really stressed out about what the future looks like and everything. And I can imagine that you've had a lot of that going on in your life too. So thank you for protecting us. Thank you for helping us. And I hope that you are back out enjoying the world sooner than later. Yeah. Timo Satan, nice. That's exactly what I thought. It's great to learn tricks and chain interesting combos to create variety. I agree. I think it's pretty awesome too. Justin Blanchard, you recommended some books a while back for mastery. What was it? Oh wow. So books plural that I would recommend for mastery. Number 1 is a book called, appropriately enough, Mastery. It's by an author named George Leonard. That is the book that changed my life. I started reading that right about the same time that I started spinning poi, and it changed the way that I thought about practice and about discipline, and for the better, I must say. Mastery by George Leonard is where I would start. I would also recommend, so I'm tempted to say Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell because it talks a lot about the 10,000 hour rule, but I don't think Malcolm Gladwell does a very good job of describing the 10,000 hour rule. In fact, I think that a lot of the backlash against that was because he did such a bad job explaining it. I'm trying to, I know of a better one. So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. I think that's by Cal Newport. So Good They Can't Ignore You is definitely one of those that talks about deliberate practice. I would also, I have many of them on my bookshelf. That would be a great way for me to remind myself of this. Talent is Overrated by Jeff Colvin. That's a great one. Bought that one in hardcover. Let's see here. I have my books in alphabetical order by author, but not by topic, so it makes moments like this kind of difficult. Another great book that talks about the 10,000 hour rule is This Is Your Brain on Music by, I think it's Steve Levitin wrote that. Really good book. And it's great because it talks a lot about the brain science of music as well. He goes deeply into the 10,000 hour rule. And, the 10,000 hour rule, of course, is very dependent upon you getting in deliberate practice rather than just 10,000 hours of practice. So I recommend that. I think I also have some books on my iPad that I would recommend. Give me 1 second to get that out. So I do the thing where I go back and forth between e-readers and like physical books, and I like e-readers because I can have like a million books on me at the same all at the same time. But I like physical books because it's just a much more satisfying experience for me. But yeah, so I go back and forth between the two. Let's see here. I know there was one that I read on here that I thought was really good. No. I have a lot of damn books on here. got a lot of books on here. Oh, I think it was So Good They Can't Ignore You. And it is by Cal Newport, yeah. Oh, and The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. Also a great book. And let me see if I have it. So I use I use both iBooks as well as Kindle because of course I do. So let me see if there is one in here that I'm not thinking of as well. Nope, that appears to be all of them. So it's So Good They Can't Ignore You, The Talent Code, Talent is Overrated, I guess Outliers, and Mastery. Those are the 5 books I would recommend for mastering any particular thing. Matt Ben Daniel, I'll email you regarding Handbrake. Tried constant frame rate. I don't think it can fix what's ill in my T1i. I did find this page. I think you meant to paste a link there, but it didn't come through, unfortunately. Melissa Shute, what is your favorite pair of poi to use? Currently, it is this poi right here. These are contact poi from Lantern Smith. They're emoji poi. These I actually acquired for a video project a while back where the video didn't quite turn out as I was hoping it was going to, but I still had them laying around. So these are the pair that I've had from them for the past year, and I replaced the tethers with 3/8" rope tethers because I was having difficulties cutting out the background behind them for my thumbnails, and now I'm finding that I just don't really like 3/8" tethers. So I have switched over to using this pair primarily. In theory, Lantern Smith has another pair that they are sending me to replace these with thinner tethers and everything. And I am certain that those will become my favorite when they arrive because I like the colors on them and everything. What I like about them is I like the weight adjustable nature of them, and I've found that with the thinner tethers they're more responsive when you're dancing, so I can dance at faster tempos than I would normally be able to. Oh goodness, more questions coming in. So everybody, I'm going to say that I'm going to call it at 9:30 Eastern time, so that will be in about 10 minutes, just because my voice is starting to go here, and I would like a chance to be able to wind down before my evening is up. So pour on in those questions. You got 10 minutes to do it. Angelo Rico asks, super newbie question. Is it normal to get blisters on your fingers when starting out? Yes. Yes, it is. Or am I holding the poi wrong? I have the knob handles. No, you're doing it absolutely right. It's just a rite of passage for everybody who starts out spinning poi and everything. The thing that really will drive you crazy is that basically you're going to have to develop calluses on any surface that's in contact with the tethers. So say like when you switch over to doing 2 poi, 1 hand, it's one of those things that, you know, I anchor the other tether between my ring finger and my pinky, and because of that, I started getting blisters between these 2 fingers here, and I still sometimes do. I had to build up calluses between these 2 fingers, which is so annoying. Oh my goodness. But yes, it's normal to get those blisters. Get some athletic tape, tape it up and everything. Build up your calluses. We all do it. It's a rite of passage. It just happens. It's like picking up guitar and having to build up the calluses on your fingertips and everything. It's a part of the journey. It happens. It's not the end of the world. Justin Blanchard. I have always been curious to this. Did you seek sponsorships or did they find you? How did that journey take place? The short answer is both. So there have been some opportunities that companies have come to me wanting to sponsor me doing things. Some examples of this include back in the day, Emazing Lights sponsored a couple videos from me. And they approached me about those. Ultrapoi has also approached me. Like, the whole idea of doing a flow video every month was Ultrapoi's idea. They kind of came to me and they're just like, hey, can we sponsor a flow video from you every month? And I was just kind of like, sure. I don't think anybody's really that interested in watching me flow, but yeah, if that floats your boat, we can definitely do that. And it turned out to be really good for both them and also for me. Putting out those videos definitely gets people using my promo code a lot, and it's good for their business and it's good for mine. Some of the sponsored series that I think actually all of the sponsored series that I've done, I have approached the company in order to do it. The series that I did with Mayday Atlanta, which is now Matrix Fire Safety, I approached Adam May, the CEO of that company. I'd been using his blankets for a couple years, and I was straight up like, hey, I have an idea that I think is going to help raise your profile, and I think that it would be smart for you to market this way and everything. And it didn't take that much to convince him. I approached Flow Toys about doing the Partner Poi series. I pitched them on that. I also pitched Ultrapoi on the Contact Poi series. I think that doing the Flow videos is a better fit for both them and I, but at the same time, I'm glad I did that series. I have put pitches out there to a couple other companies too, and I have tentatively gotten positive results from them, but unfortunately the quarantine hit before we could dig much more into them, and all of those projects are kind of on pause right now. But the short answer is it's a combination of sometimes the company approaches me and sometimes I approach the company. Usually when I approach the company, it's because there's a particular thing that I want to teach that I'm realizing, hey, this would showcase this product in a way that I think would really be good for the company and everything. So yeah, the short answer is it's a combination of both. Justin Blanchard, what is a recommended size for starting Contact? 100 millimeter? I would actually start with 90 millimeters personally. I mean, and here's the thing, there's really no wrong answer there. 100 millimeter is more visible. It's better for like stage performance and everything. But functionally, you can switch back and forth between the two. I think that people who start on hundreds have a more difficult time switching to 90s than people who start on 90s do switching to hundreds. So I would start on the one that's easier to adjust from, rather than starting on the one that is harder to adjust from. That would be my feedback on that. Emily Yelland, if I want to shorten my poi, should I cut off the excess tether? Point of no return, or just let it dangle out in the end? If you are sure that you have the poi at the proper length, I would cut off the excess. It's cleaner and it's less likely to get in your way. There have been many times when I've had tethers and I've had that same moment where I'm like, I don't know if I want to cut this. What if I want to make it longer at some point and everything? Because you can always make it shorter, but you can't make it longer. And the answer there is, I mean, I would just spin with them for a couple weeks, and if it feels good and you don't have an inclination to make them any longer, go ahead and cut them. You can always get new tethers, Yeah. Emily Yellen, same for my fire poi. Would have to permanently take off chains and reattach. Yeah, with fire poi, it's really tricky. I feel like with fire poi, a lot of the time, you tend to want them to be an inch or two longer than your practice poi, just like because there's a lot of drag due to the fire put on them in the first place. And I don't know, I feel like there's something about having slightly longer poi on fire that feels right to me. I don't know why, but it's one of those things that you kind of have to just try it and see how it happens and everything. If you have a length that you're comfortable with and everything, go ahead and trim them. And the other thing to bear in mind is you're gonna change your mind at some point. I have been through so many cycles in my time spinning of going between longer poi and shorter poi, and it all depends on where you're at and what's fashionable, what is conducive to the particular style you're doing at any given point. So the fact that you're going to change your mind is not a reason not to cut them. by the time you change your mind, you'll probably be ready for a new set anyway. So if you've spun with them for a few weeks and they feel comfortable and everything feels fine, then yeah, I'd go ahead and cut them. And be ready for when you change your mind and ready to get a new pair, you know? I will say this is one of the reasons that I really like the Lanternsmith poi, because I think these pair have this. You know, I've got a bunch of excess rope inside of these heads, so I can go ahead and make these longer at some point in the future if I want to and everything. I've got that option. These poi are freaking awesome like that. They're the only poi that I know of where it's super easy to change your mind on the fly if you want to. Yet another reason why they're my favorite contact poi, why they're my favorite poi to use in general, you know? Doesn't help you on the fire poi question, but at least in terms of contact poi, get a set of Lanternsmith poi. You can always change your mind later, you know? Melissa Shoot, what is the best pair of poi to use if you are a newbie? Flow Toys, Pod Poi, straight up. Use the promo code DrexFactor at checkout to get 10% off a set of these. These are straight up the best beginner poi out there. They're soft, they're really durable, they light up at night so you can keep on practicing, and they're relatively light, so you can go long hours on them, which is really important. Yeah. Aaron Martin, do you have any recommendations for fire poi? I've used Home of Poi Monkey Fist and felt they were a bit heavy. So currently I use fire poi from two different companies. Primarily, I use fire poi from Dark Monk because they have light up handles on them and everything, and I'm really big into using the light up handles right now. I also have a set from Crispy Clowns that I've been meaning to swap out the handles so they have glow handles and everything. So the Crispy Clowns heads last longer than the Dark Monk heads, that is, they stay lit longer. I don't know whether that's a thing that you want or not. If you're just starting off, having them last longer is probably actually not a thing that you're really looking for. But both companies make decent poi, and I have enjoyed spinning both companies' poi and everything. I haven't used Home of Poi in such a long time. I don't know even how they're manufacturing them at this point. So yeah, I would recommend Dark Monk and Crispy Clowns. Both of them make a good set of poi. Matt Ben Daniel says, I tie up excess tether with a short length of runner band. That's also a rubber band. Gotcha. It's also a good option for sure. Super Bass, is there a poi trick where you add weight to one side and do a gunslinger type trick with only one poi? I saw something like it in a performance and I don't know what it is. A poi trick where you add weight to one side. Huh. I am not sure. Not quite sure what you're asking about there. So I do gunslingers with contact poi, which means that I'm gripping the tether right about here. And even still, the thumb end is definitely heavier than the pinky end and everything, but they kind of begin to even each other out just due to angular momentum and everything. I don't know if that's what you're talking about or not, but I do all of my gunslingers on poi that have uneven weight distribution, which took me a long time to get down, but it was also one of those things where I'm just kind of like, I'm not going to switch to evenly weighted handles, so it's either learn how to do gunslingers with off-weight poi or don't do gunslingers. I'm like, I want to do gunslingers, so I spent the time and figured out how to do it. Guillaume Lassert says, wow, I can't believe I caught this live. What's your worst poi accident so far? There was a performance that I did at a music festival several years ago where I wrapped the poi around my wrists and they got stuck there. And I played this off so that the audience had no idea, but it's the worst burn I've ever given myself. I had the chains like really tightly against my skin and everything, and of course, you know, the metal hardware close to the head and everything, if it touches you while it's lit, it's an instant second-degree burn. So it blistered, and I actually lost a bunch of skin on my left wrist as a result of it. I had to go get treated for it right away because It was clear that it was a pretty nasty burn and everything. And there's no sign of it now. It took probably 2 or 3 years for the scar from that to disappear. And now there's no sign of it that I can see here anymore, at least. But yeah, I think that's the worst injury I've given myself for sure. And somebody whose name is written in Cyrillic is saying salam. Salam to you as well. Cool. So we are at 9:30. So I am going to call it an evening, my friends. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. Thank you for everybody who donated to my channel via the super chat. For those of you who are enjoying my work and would like to support it, you can also sign up for my Patreon over at patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi. It really, really helps me out. And yeah, I will do another one of these next month. So I will try and keep this a regular thing. Yeah. Thank you all, and have yourselves a great evening. And pretty please, stay healthy, take care of each other, and make sure that you keep on spinning through this, yeah? Awesome. Good night, friends.